Well, let's get more from Chucks Okereke. He's a professor of global environmental and climate governance. Professor, thanks for speaking to us. So the European Central Bank is warning these heat waves are directly driving up food prices. Are we now looking at a permanent shift where extreme weather becomes a primary driver of inflation?
The short answer is potentially yes. I mean, we've always known for a very long time that short-term changes in the climate system can drive inflation. But what we are now seeing increasingly is that this climate shock is becoming a constant, persistent, and fundamental structural feature of our economies and have a very long-term impact on inflation. So, of course, as you've been saying, one of the key areas is agriculture. Heat waves affects wheat production, rice, vegetable, maize, etc. And these tend to then reduce supply, and supply side inflation is much more difficult to manage because you cannot deal with it through, for example, increase in interest rates. But also, it is important to highlight that this is also happening across many parts of the world. We're seeing, not just in Europe, where the cost of olive oil in Spain has gone very, very high because of heat, but we're also seeing this affect the cost of cocoa in West Africa and the cost of coffee in areas such as Colombia and Brazil. So I'm afraid that this is going to be a long-term impact that is going to affect not just the agriculture, but also the energy, the insurance, and labor productivity sector.
Well, what measures are we seeing countries take to try and mitigate the consequences of this? Because as you say, this is here for the long term. Are there short-term efforts being made right now to try and contain it so that it's not as bad in the long term?
This is a very good question because it brings to the fore some of the work I've been doing for many, many years, trying to warn countries that this is a long-term issue and that you cannot address it by, just focusing on the next election cycle. The problem, however, is that whilst countries are now increasing their weather warning, their climate awareness, some tree planting, creating some cooling systems around the cities, these measures are still very, very little compared to the scale and the urgency is required. And part of the problem is because heat wave kills people in their homes, at hospitals, and it does not generate the same kind of media attention or policy frenzy that maybe wildfire or other kind of events, climate-related disasters generate. The other thing is also that governments are very, very slow in putting money into this because it's about a long-term adaptation. Investing in infrastructure, for example, to expand your rail system takes a lot of money, and the benefits takes a long time to resolve. And often you see government focusing on short-term measures rather than on long-term measures because they are struggling to bring the politics around this kind of long-term measures, which do not fit neat election cycles.
It shows how much still needs to be done. Professor Okereke of Global Environmental and Climate Governance, really good to speak to you. Thank you very much.